Ladies and gentlemen, please tell me whom this story is about. A boy, born in secrecy, is kept and nursed by his mother for a couple of months in secrecy, and then put in a basket, that basket let float on the river until someone finds the basket, draws it out of the water, and raises the boy, who then becomes a great leader. You surely think this is about Moshe Rabbeinu. However, this is not only the story of Moses. According to an autobiographical tablet dating to roughly 2,600 years ago, it's also the story of the Akkadian king Sargon the Great, who lived a couple of centuries before Moshe Rabbeinu. Academics during the 20th century have repeatedly tried to compare both stories, underline the commonalities. However, according to a marvelous insight by Rabbi Joshua Berman of Bar-Ilan University, we should look not only at the common points of the story, but most importantly at the differences. Sargon was born in secrecy. His mother took care of him, put him on the river, and that's very similar to Moshe's story. However, from that point on, the two stories diverge. As he tells the story on the tablet, he was drawn accidentally out of the water by a farmer who was drawing water. That farmer suddenly discovers he has a baby on his lap. It takes a couple of years until Sargon is told of what great origins he comes and what kind of great destiny he has ahead of him. The story of Moshe is a very different story. After his mother entrusts him to the water, puts him on the river, his sister refuses to accept that her brother is simply gone. And so even though she was a little girl, 6 or 7 years old, she decides to run along the bank of the Nile in order to see what will happen to her brother who is floating in that basket. She makes a choice, and she endangers herself with it. Imagine what would happen if the boy is found by someone who is bent on fulfilling the decree of the Pharaoh and kill the boy, and realizes that this boy was kept alive against the decree and is being followed by a little girl who seems to care about this boy. She would surely be killed as well. Next in the story is a princess, the daughter of the Pharaoh, who sees the baskets. Out of a natural sense of curiosity, she wonders what's in there and wants to get hold of it and look inside. That's okay. But then she sees a boy, and she's not daft. She knows where this boy is from and says, Mi yaldei ha'ivrim zeh, this is a Hebrew child. She knows this is a child that, according to her father's decree, should be killed. And she makes a choice. She does not fulfill her father's decree, does not expose the boy to the elements to die of his own accord. She does not kill him actively. She has mercy on the child. The girl makes another choice. Against all sense of separation of classes in that society, that slave girl decides to break through the entourage of the princess and approaches her. And the princess, who would be expected to be afraid, asks that girl be taken away from there, or otherwise ignore the girl, listens to what the girl has to say. And with unbelievable chutzpah, with a great courage, that girl says, shall I bring a wet nurse to you to take care of the boy? And the princess hears and listens and agrees. The mother is then brought as a wet nurse. But let's remember, the princess is not daft. What are the odds that the little girl is running around by accident trying to help out a little boy that was just found by a princess? And what are the odds that she runs around with a Rolodex of all the wet nurses in Egypt? The answer is, the princess most likely realizes that this girl is related both to the boy and to the wet nurse. And it's very likely that that wet nurse is the boy's mother. And yet, the princess talks to the mother and agrees on terms upon which the mother will nurse the boy and then return him to the princess. And there the mother makes a choice as well, because she gives up her status as a mother. She agrees to be merely a wet nurse who will bring the boy back. In other words, Moshe's upbringing was the result of multiple choices by 3 different women to do what's right and not care about the consequences. We have a little girl who doesn't care about endangering her life, who doesn't care about ignoring the strict protocols of how you approach or do not approach a princess. We have the princess who refuses to abide by her father's decrees and who refuses to abide by the protocol to ignore the slave girl or have her removed. We have the mother who disregards her own honor as a mother, her own desire to be the main person who will raise this child in order to allow the child to live. And what comes out of it? Moshe Rabbeinu, a person who cares deeply, deeply about justice, who is revolted by the oppression of his brethren, but even more revolted at the strife he sees among them. That desire for justice is a direct consequence of the entourage that was there to bring him into the world. That is how a leader is born.